Okay, so now we're at a point where we still have some details to add on here, but for purposes of video demonstration, I want to do some structural work before I add some more details. I'm going to save a few things for your live demo, but today I'm at a point where I want to attach the head of the piece to the neck here. So I've got the neck so it extends about an inch, inch and a half into the skull. And I've left an opening here with some newspaper stuffed in there to support the head on this neck piece and to give me more flexibility about positioning it. So go ahead and leave the newspaper in there. It's just going to fire out. And then you want to bring the chin to the angle that you want it. So if your person has sort of a wattle or jowls, you want to start gradually working those in, angling down. That'll probably be the most distinctive angle on the neck and chin area. Most of us don't have very strong jawline. And the distinction between the head and the neck here is pretty much going to give you a natural looking jawline. Okay, so we want to bring that down a little more. Make sure your head is not too far up on the neck area. Don't want it too long. I'm going to leave it a slightly longer for exaggeration just because I want a little bit of that expressionistic long neck for the subject here. But I'm not going to make it too long. I don't want him to look like a flamingo. Okay. So I've got a good angle here on the jaw and the neck. You can do a little shaping. Probably shape his hairline a little more, but we want to make sure this is nice and attached. So I'm going to take my slip. Okay. And you want to make sure that the neck piece is leather hard when you do this. If it is at all flexible, this is just going to be a nightmare. So you want to get that neck piece just to the point of dryness where you can still attach clay to it, but you do not want it to be in any way flexible. So make sure that it is nice and immobile so it works for a structure. Okay, so I'm going to get in there and score underneath. So this is where learning that coil method that everybody thinks is pretty boring in their beginning class is going to pay off for you today, because we're going to roll a little bit of a coil here, pretty thin. Don't need it to be too large. I'm going to go ahead and slip and score that. Okay. So I'm going to start in the back here, just underneath where the back of the skull attaches to the neck. Just like we did when we learned coiling, we're just going to take our finger and press that gently as we lay that into the seam there. Okay. That stretches the coil just a bit as we go. Make sure it's nice and laid into the seam there. Okay. Okay. I'm going to roll another coil for the other half. Okay. Lay that in there. Okay. Very good. Come back to where I started on the back there. And then I'm just going to gently come in and blend that down. This clay I'm using, Black Rock, is very plastic despite having grog in it, which makes it good for some things. But for other things, I've had to be pretty considerate about the timing of things. It is extremely plastic when it's moist like this, and it picks up detail really well, which I really like about it. But it also, when you're doing these preliminary bits like this, it is very flexible. And so I've been doing just kind of my preliminary blending just to get things on there, and then waiting a day or two and it sets up just a little bit more. Still flexible, but not as out of the bag moist. And then I can do a little more polishing. So it's going to kind of depend on your clay, what you need to do. But it's always kind of a good rule of thumb just to kind of come in and do your rough blending, attaching, and then maybe wait just a little bit till that clay is a little less flexible, less likely to leave burrs, and a lot of finger marks and texture when you're trying to smooth it. Okay. So I'm working that in there, getting it the angle that I want it, work it into the surface of the clay that's already there. There we go. Okay. So I might end up liking some of these marks and leaving them there. They kind of look like brush strokes. But sometimes people want a completely smooth look. They'll want to smooth all that out. Okay, so since we already have a hole down here between his shoulders and his neck, we've got an air space in his head. We've got a continuous flow of air from the head through the neck to the shoulders, so we don't need to worry about poking holes in the back. Okay. If you do put a clay base on the bottom, you'll have to put another hole to let out air down there, but we're not at that spot yet. Okay. There we go. So I've got his head at kind of a nice tilt there, kind of a thoughtful expression. Okay, and I haven't used very much of a coil to attach those, so I've maintained the integrity of his jawline. Okay, gradually blending back to the back of the skull. Okay, it's a little flatter here in this transition behind the ear. Okay, so our jaw just meets up right under the earlobe there. So we're going to have a slight angle as that works up there. And like I said, it is very rare to have someone so strong jawed that they have like a 90-degree angle from here to down to the chin. So we want to make sure that we make that kind of a gradual transition. Okay. Okay, so from here on the back of the head, I think the hair is still a little too even looking. So I'm breaking up that line a little more, giving him a more natural looking hairline. Okay, and I've been going in, since I attached the hair, and sort of styling it, making some parts go back a little more, and making more of a transition between this area where it was very thin towards this thicker area in the back. Okay. So you can carve in there, bring your lines back in. Doing a bit of cross hatching here, not putting in every strand of hair, just putting in the gesture and the direction that the hair grows in. Gives you much more of an impression of hair. Okay. Putting a shorter cross hatching up here where his hairline begins to fade, just to give that more of a sense of where the line is, where his top of his head starts there. Okay. So when someone who even doesn't have a great deal of hair, there's a lot of gesture in a hair, and you want to balance it with the composition just the way you do with anything else. Look at the masses, the shadows, the proportion, the angles. Just get in the habit of thinking of hair just like any other part of a composition. Okay. There we go. Okay, so that's hair and jaw. And in the next video, we'll start working on details like the clothing and the coat. Okay, so you can see I've already sort of sketched in the mass of the line where I want the collar to start and the coat to start. So I already know where those pieces of clay are going to go in relation to his head and neck.